up to the front.
And will somebody tell me when we're live on stream as well?
It's good to know.
Okay. Well, welcome. For those who are joining us online, today is a very special session of our regular book club. In addition to our kind of normal streaming, we also have a live studio audience here from a historic building in Washington, D.C. So it's special for that reason, but it's also special because it's an honor for us to have Luis Miranda Jr. joining us to give us insights on his most recent book, Relentless, which, as noted in the forward, is a memoir, but a lot more. It's also a bit of a guide for organization. It's a bit of an explanation of the Latino momentum and how that is shaping politics in the United States. And I'm looking forward to diving into that. Although I know most of you have had the opportunity to read the book, I do want to highlight just a few pieces before I ask Luis to say hello. Just by way of background, Luis moved from Puerto Rico to New York City in 1974 with the original intent to study psychology, but found himself drawn to community action and organization, something that I know that our leadership council members who are joining us online, and certainly all of the people in the room share an affinity towards. He had the opportunity in the 80s to be a special advisor for Hispanic affairs for Mayor Ed Koch, and then he's continued to serve in roles in the Dinkins and Giuliani administrations. Subsequently, was a founding partner in the Miranda Group, and Luis consulted on several successful political campaigns, including the senatorial campaigns for Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton, Senator Chuck Schumer, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, and most recently, the New York Attorney General Letitia James' re-election campaign. And then lastly, and apologies for reading some of this, but it's far too many accomplishments for me to have committed smoothly to memory. But Luis was also the founding president of the Hispanic Federation, currently the chairperson of the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance, Viva Broadway, and the Public Theater. He's a board member of the city, former board chair of the Latino Victory Fund, and the Center for Latin American, Caribbean, and Latino Studies at CUNY Grad Center. So there's a lot there, but first and foremost, thank you so much, Luis, for joining us.
Thank you for inviting
me. I do have some questions, and we will take questions from the audience and online. But before we jump into any questions, I'd just love to hear a little bit from you. You know how the book came to be, and what you were hoping people take away from exploring the method.
The book started as a dare. A friend of mine heard me complain constantly. You could ask my wife, I could be quite a little bitch when I'm complaining constantly. And I complained about the state of affairs, what people were saying about the Latino population. And then I guess out of not wanting to hear me complain anymore, she said, well, why don't you write your own thoughts and your own ideas about the state of affairs? And I told her, if you get me a publisher, I'll do it. And she did. Then I was stuck with the task. And there, I have a collaborator in writing the book. And luckily, I do have a very supportive family who helped through the process from their vantage point. When I finished the first draft, I gave it to my son, to Lin-Manuel, and he gave me 8 pages. one space of copious notes on the book. Couple of salient points. One was, if you call 43 people assholes, it's very difficult to discern who is an asshole. So took that note to heart. And I think I ended up with 3 assholes. And the second one was, it reads too much like if you're talking. You need to turn it more into a written book. And we did that. My daughter, who thinks very, very differently, her notes were that it happened in 1984. It happened in 1990. I'm like, it fits better. It's like, but facts are facts. I said, okay, so let's either get rid of it or try to fit it in time and space when it makes sense. And my wife read it to protect me, which she does quite often. And sort of had different bullets. Do you really need to talk about this? I'm like, yeah. Can it be solved? Kind of. So we went through that, and that sort of helped shape some of the tone of the book. But from all of this process, what I enjoyed the most was the audiobook. Reading the book was a riot. I had so much fun. I got tons of notes because, I was criticizing Trump. I would be Trump. I would be reading as if I was Trump. And Hachette was like, that's not the way we do it. You don't have to be every character. So there was a lot of learning attached that they wanted me to read the book not like I usually speak, but softer, because then when people buy it, they're going to listen to it at 1.5. So I needed to read slower so that then the person who's listening can go as fast as they want and rewind as much as they want. So it was a lot of fun.
Excellent. You should suggest to them that people will listen to you at 0.75. Well, thank you. You're making the job of the interviewer a lot easier. I know one of the tricks is always how do you tease out and get some candid and real thoughts and real. That's not going to be a challenge today.
It is not. It's never a challenge.
It's maybe starting, somewhere in the middle. One of the observations to make early on that we can follow up later on in the book is an observation about the way in which the political community views the Latino community, and kind of it takes a page from how engagement with the African American and Black organizations politically. There was a shared understanding around slavery and historic engagement that made monolithic style engagement with a community possible, but that applying that to the Latino community where, the experience of somebody who came from Cuba versus Guatemala versus Mexico versus Argentina would all be very, very different. And so I'm curious, both in, your thoughts on how that evolved and how you were able to, kind of engage and drive the movement in a way that, led to the creation of the Federation and kind of hopefully what that means for politics today.
It's clear that what we try to do with every new group that comes into the country, and certainly for Latinos, is to use the black-white paradigm that sort of explain politics for us, explain relationships, explain institutions, but that is not the reality of the Latino community. When you have from generations of people who we conquered in the expansion of the US, who all of a sudden realized that they were Latinos, they were Chicanos, they were Mexicans, they were something else. So my own experience, I am Puerto Rican, I was Puerto Rican, and all of a sudden I landed in New York, and all of a sudden I was Hispanic, which was a term that had no meaning and no emotional attachment to me. If someone said, you're Puerto Rican, I could see the flag, I could see the contour of the island and the other two islands around it. I could attach my heart to that description. But Hispanic, it's a construct that we create to make our lives easier in explaining a complicated relationship of a whole bunch of people that came from a whole bunch of countries or were already here and we conquered, and all of a sudden we put them together. When we created the Hispanic Federation, it was at the same time that the Asian American Federation was launched, and now no longer the president, but the president of the Asian American Federation, and I will talk about what is it that we're supposed to do now. I was supposed to bring a whole bunch of people together. It was actually easier for me than from him, because he was trying to bring together people who don't even have the same ancestry or the same language. At least Spain did such a good job at killing Indians and making sure Catholicism was all over. They were an incredible empire, but that was not the reality for his past. But I think that at the end we all accept it because on the one hand, it gives us more political power. It is easier and obviously more powerful to be 65 million than 5 million Puerto Ricans or 2 million Cubans. 65 sounds heftier in terms of political power. And two, because now we have begun as a community to figure out what are the things that bring us together to fight the fights that we're going to have to fight.
You make it clear in the book too that power of an aggregated voice, but the complexity that comes from a whole bunch of different elements that need to be brought into that. And kind of on a similar note, you talk about your time working with Mayor Koch and the challenges, and I think it's more of a backdrop for some of the stories, but the scandals that were going on there. I want to ask, given New York City today, and a mayor who is certainly surrounded by challenges and scandal in a different way. What is the kind of the lived experience you had working with the mayor? Like, how would you guide the people who are still looking for kind of improvement improvement or changes or representation for their communities in New York City, given what's going on?
It's, I think when Jerry began the discussion, these are very difficult times. I don't recall ever to be in such a country, such a horrible time. As I was flying here, I was looking at the newspapers. I wanted one piece of good news. I want to read about a dog that was lost and found and made a kid happy. But instead, everything on every front page of every paper was the very difficult situation that we live nationwide. Add to that the reality that we now have in New York, where we have a mayor who lost its ability to govern. It's over. I guess this is the way couples who try to save their marriage by having one kid feel. That's somehow we have this kid, this isn't gonna work. I don't understand why he doesn't get that he cannot govern anymore. And that in trying to hold on to power, the city gets into an even more difficult situation. And then we will have a mayoral race. And in that mayoral race, Andrew Cuomo can be, and right now, it's a favorite to be our next mayor. So these are complicated times for New York, to say the least. So I remember when I lived through the last term of the Koch administration, there were scandals and suicides, and all of it, as I think about it, revolved around power and money. Now, that power and money gets more complicated because it's affecting the very foundation of who we are as a country. And thank God, institutions like yours exist, and you're still committed to fight this fight. I'm 70 years old. My wife and I spent our entire lives, she in the reproductive side of the equation, I in the empowerment side. We thought we had solved the issues, and we were leaving behind for our kids and our grandkids a better place, and it's gone to shit. So we feel a bit like a faith, because you fought and worked, and things are way worse than when we were fighting those battles.
Well, I wish I had a segue that involved the puppy being found, but I think a shift of gears that I know that there are many people in the room that would have noted in the book is there was a point still in the Koch administration where you were asked to be the head of Hispanic affairs, and your response is that's I'm going to paraphrase in a much more family-friendly format, but you know, basically that's not a real job, and you receive the guidance. Well, then make it one, and you proceed to do that. And I know that's as an administrator, I want people to do that in a more measured way, but I think is a bit of career guidance that particularly in this moment in time, could be, unlock a lot of energy, capacity, creativity. And so I'm just curious, how do you guide people in that?
I think age, experience, and where you're at is gonna help you guide what you do and what are you willing to tolerate. I think that there has to be some elasticity to our belief system. And it evolves through time. But when it's so elastic, it can break. And when it breaks, you could never put it together again. I don't care if you become a monk and you go and sit for a year. Once you break your belief system, you can put it together. I didn't realize, because I tried to sometimes hide myself under a rock to nurture my soul for a second. That Mayor Adams had little fox with a monster who had eyes, making fun of their relationship, which included deporting thousands of people and trying to squash real charges that were being brought against him. And they were there in the couch with those three assholes making fun of the situation. Once that happens, you can't undo it. So as you're going through life, for me, in working in the Koch administration, is what am I willing to compromise? Because I'm going to be able to get real benefits for people, not money. You don't make money in government. And when it's not, you cannot do it anymore. And for me, it was in the Giuliani administration, where everyone, including my wife, said to me, "Don't take that job, but you feed your own lives and you eat your own shit." And so I'm like, I'm Luis Miranda. I could do this job. I could do great things. And it was the possibility of doing great things, to be in charge of the largest public health system, hospital system in the country. It's a great responsibility to help people who have real needs. And it lasted a year, because in a year, they wanted me to cut AIDS funding in the middle of the pandemic. And that's when you have to wrestle with yourself and your belief system. And in my head, friends will tell me, Luis, it's a $15 million cut in a $3 billion bureaucracy. It's nothing. You surrounding error, you'll be able to find the money somewhere else to meet the budgets for that program. But symbolically, it meant that I would go to a place that I had never been, which was to do something totally opposed to my belief system. So I resigned. And each of us are faced with the reality. The 7 Justice Department people who said, we're not doing this shit. We're lawyers and we're gonna hold the law. And this is what we're gonna do. You all will know when it's time to move on, fight inside the system, or fight outside the system. But we always have to be doing those value checks with ourselves so that we don't let it go so far. Like I see Marco Rubio right now as Secretary of State. And you know, the papers tell you every day, this is what he's saying today. This is what he said 3 fucking months ago. And it's totally opposite. I don't know how people can.
And that seems to be, this my interpretation when I read, you have so many individuals that you've come in contact with, and a big piece of what your interaction with them is driven by is the quality of their character. You know, you mentioned people that you're skeptical about. You say, you know, Gillibrand and her gun under the bed and that, but it's clear that through engagement, you have different players that you deem to be, this is a person of character, even if there are some pragmatic differences of opinion. So I'm curious to hear what's your thought on the character and the landscape today.
Trump told us throughout the campaign what he was going to do. It should be no surprise to anyone. The people who upset me the most, and literally, I have to read. I have to do the reading exercises. My wife is a great clinical psychologist, and she has taught me great reading exercises. Someone who voted for Trump and comes to tell me what is happening, I want to spit on them. I'm going to be not to spit on them. So, people like Trump, they are who they are. He has been a thought. His entire life in New York, as a president, as a husband, I would be ashamed to call him like that. But there are other people like Marco Rubio who have had a decent career of success, coming from nothing and struggling with family and friends to become something and to become a caricature of who they are as people. It's very sad. And for Latinos in particular, it takes us a generation to make our leaders because we don't come from wealth. So we depend on the social help and mentors to get to some. So to lose leaders, it's a shame for our community.
And I have one more question, but I know there'll be questions in the room and there will be some online, so we'll go to those in a moment.
I'll try to be happy.
Oh man, I should have a different question then. The one piece where, you know, the rhythm of reading the memoir and the way that you intertwine, you know, stories about family, experience, and then, you know, some of the, just kind of the real, you know, facts or reality in there. The one place where I had to check to see if I was missing a whole chapter was immigration. Because you so powerfully describe, you know, so many of the vibrant and truly American elements that came as positive, and then and I recognize that a lot has probably happened between the day the book was submitted and today, but you know, I was ready to hear. Here's the good news, or here's the answer, or here's the piece, and I don't know if there, you know, I would be curious to hear if there is if you have thoughts on the way forward in kind of mobilization, in advocacy, given that it does seem that American general point of view has moved away from certainly the facts, but also from where it had been even 10 years ago.
I think we wanted a different outcome. I spent a lot of time in the entertainment field because of my son. So I can separate a rally that has Beyonce and the energy that creates with the energy of politics and elected people. They're very, very different. And I think we got caught in the celebrity part of it, of how much energy and happiness that caused, that we forgot that all that really has to translate into real votes to elect people. I tried, my wife tells me all the time, oh my God, can you be happier? I'm like, okay, yeah, it's not. But I never got caught in that because I spent this election going to places to try to elect Latinos. And I heard from people how difficult it was going to be. I heard from the candidates who we were supporting at Latino Victory that we were in a bad place. I personally did something that you should not do organizationally, which was to give back a Harris PAC $2 million because I did not agree how they wanted me to spend those $2 million. I'm like, I don't want your fucking money. If I have to spend it the way you want, I am wasting $2 million of too many people who gave money for this to happen. I'm happy to take that money and spend it in very Latino candidates with the national ticket. But my mandate is not just to push the national ticket. So I thought we were going to lose. So I never drank the Kool-Aid that things were differently. And if you talk to people through my life, people will tell you that I tell them all the time, you dispense Kool-Aid. You don't drink the Kool-Aid. You go through life making people think we're winning and how we're winning. You give that Kool-Aid to everyone, but never drink the Kool-Aid, because if you do, you could then be disengaged from what's really happening from your heart and your mind. So I knew we were not going to win, but you could never imagine that it could be as bad. Yesterday, I talked to a guy who works at the airport in New York, in charge of an area, good immigrant, American citizen, worked hard all his life, put his kids through college, and he was arrested yesterday because ICE came into the subway station where there's lots of immigrants, because now they're getting desperate because they're spending millions and millions of dollars and they can't find the criminals. So now they arrest anybody who's there, and he got arrested. And not in his wildest dream did he think he will be in that situation. But When you think about it, what do you carry if you are not blonde and blue eyes? Do we carry our passports with us all the time? I finally put my local entry card in my wallet. Says it, this may come handy at some point, but imagine in the plane here, my wife wrote a column because she's a great clinical psychologist. I suck at it. And she was writing a column about the emotional distress on kids, particularly in immigrant families, about everything that is happening and everything that they hear, particularly when parents are not sending kids to school because of the fear. And I'm like, wow, this is tough times. So the good news is that my wife is a great clinical psychologist. And the people who read this column are going to get real information as to how to deal with their emotions. The bad news is that we have to do all of this. That now I have to carry my global entry card just in case I'm stopped to show that I am an American citizen.
I appreciate that answer. It's a benefit that doesn't show up on the global entry list of benefits, but I imagine people will go through some thought process, and we certainly, as an organization, been engaging with people who have been caught in the inappropriate detention process. I do want to take some questions from the room, and then we can go online, although I'm not sure who be able to tell me what's online, but we'll start in the room.
Oh, I do, and I'll repeat your question.
Well, my name is Isabel. Yes. Okay, perfect. But it's already online. There's a video online. So well, they'll repeat the questions.
We'll repeat the question.
Yeah. Hi. Okay, my name is Isabel, and I'm originally from Venezuela. I'm Venezuelan American, and most of my family voted for Trump. And as
And
you
then
know,
the first thing he did was to take the TPS away.
yeah, exactly. That's where I was going. So it was kind of funny in a way because that was like my little revenge, even though I hate it. But they voted for Trump, thinking that Trump was going to be very tough on Venezuela's authoritarian regime. And they just found out that, well, the next thing they did was to negotiate with the regime, and then they took the TPS to more than 500,000 Venezuelans. But where I'm going is, what do we do with these Latino communities that not only support these authoritarian men, because I do think we need to call things by their names. This is an authoritarian government, even though it was legitimately elected. But what do we do with Latino communities that not only seem to have this proximity towards authoritarian government and rule, but also want to sort of expand this narrative of immigrants being criminal and just continue to sort of disseminate this fake rhetoric about all immigrants being criminal and being bad for the United States. And after Trump canceled TPS for Venezuelans and for all other nationalities too, he actually signed an executive order offering refuge to white South Africans. So if anyone thinks that this is not a matter of race, I just don't know what else to tell them, right? So I just wanted your opinion on that, because I think it's really important to be clear and put, call things by their names, and what do we do?
Now, I'm gonna be very positive. First, George Bush got more support among Latinos than Trump. So the fact that many Latinos have voted Republican, it's not a new thing. 42% of Latinos voted for George Bush. A third voted for Trump this time around. So the good news is that 2/3 of our community did not vote for Trump. The other piece of news is that the only way we change behavior is by constantly being involved. In the Democratic Party, we go to our communities, and it worked for a very long time in the African American communities, that you will go just before election and they're gonna behave because we're better than the alternative. But we're better than the alternative in very esoteric ways. I live in an immigrant neighborhood in New York, have been there for 43 years. So the people we're talking about are the people I talk to in the supermarket every time I buy coffee. People are worried not about democracy. Democracy, it's some esoteric reality that makes us be who we are. But people are worried about real problems in their lives. And if we're talking about democracy and not also about the real problems in their lives, whoever talks about those real problems by saying, on day one, X will cost $1. People believe that they are addressing and we are explaining the concept of macroeconomics and how macroeconomics, we're doing great in the macro level, but that's not translated into the price of the normal things that people buy. We have to spend time organizing, talking to people, listening to what their concerns are. And as we spend the next 4 years filing lawsuits to kick the can down the road, and so that this draconian laws don't become the law of the land, we have to do a lot of organizing, and we need to spend time. And different people are doing different things. That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be talking to normal people and trying to figure out which organizations are doing work in organizing people, because that's where we usually lack the emphasis and the resources.
Hi, my name is Tarita. Thank you so much for being here. My question is actually about organizing. So I think you alluded to this when you were talking about the Hispanic Federation, where oftentimes the key to organizing is building successful coalitions. But within coalitions, it obviously means so many people from so many backgrounds are trying to find solidarity. So whether it be building a coalition within our communities, like for me, I come from Punjab, the South Asian community, and we build a coalition within the AAPI community, or between our communities, like within AAPI communities and Hispanic communities, what have you. How do we make sure that we, like you said, find those things that bring us together, but also do a good job of supporting each other on issues that might not affect my community, but affect yours or vice versa. Because I think oftentimes within the world of organizing, there's a little bit of struggle on that, where we can do a good job of building momentum on what brings us together. But when there's an issue that affects one of our communities, sometimes that momentum gets lost. So I would love your guidance on how do we kind of build that momentum always.
I think, because we're such a large number of Latinos, of the people who are being deported, we forget, that the 107 people who were sent to Guatemala was not one Latino. It was people from all over the world. These people are so cruel. And we all look alike, that they can't realize that they sent 107 people who don't speak a word of Spanish to Guatemala. So it sort of needs to teach us the importance of understanding when someone is taking the limelight. I have arguments all the time in communities where we have a community in New York, it's a third Asian American, it's a third Latino. And so we run candidates against each other and a white dude wins. I'm like, this was like ridiculous. I don't know, and I wish I had an answer of when our own ego can sit in an ugly chair like this and lay dormant for a little while we let somebody else take over and support that person from another community that have our same belief system. I guess if we say it enough and do it enough, it will become more. Listen on the chair, right?
This hopefully is a quick question because you kind of already touched upon this, but for me, I've always found ideologically, I have a lot of issue reconciling the idea of resigning in protest. Because I feel like then they just replace you with a yes man who can't, fight for that cause anymore. I just wondered if you could talk a little bit more about how you're saying knowing when it's time to fight from the inside versus the outside and your thoughts on that.
It is the most difficult personal and professional dilemma that I believe we are all going to face at some point in our lives. I will urge people who can stomach the stain and making someone's life miserable to do that. To constantly remind them of their inhumanity and how wrong they are. I don't have this time. Because I start spitting on people. No, I have a short fuse. So you have to be more calculated. You need to know yourself to be able to do that. And believe me, I admire the people who can do it because they can do real damage. They could constantly be the consciousness within an institution that may have none. And at the end, I believe they'll be stronger people because they went through something that made them tougher, keeping humanity and love. I can't. I know that in a day they will call the police to remove me. But the people who could do it, they have.
Another question over here. Good. Yes.
Thank you so much for your absence and telling the stories you've told about your life in the book and now. Just following the last question and your decision to resign from the Giuliani mayoral office, do you have examples of people who actually stayed and made an impact without breaking the elasticity of their values, as you mentioned earlier? Because I think it's a thin line. Most times it seems that people who cross that line never know they crossed, and they keep going further and further until, like you said, they are irredeemable. So do you have any examples?
I do. I have more examples of people who stay than people who resign. Because in fact, they continue to do good work. There was someone, good friend of mine, who stayed in the Giuliani administration as commissioner, and she changed the composition of the department to be a diverse, inclusive department. Because at the end of the day, you know, when people are mean and bad, they don't care about the little things. They care, take care of my friend. He needs $50 million contract. But if you still have $1 billion to play with, so I guess I can't do it. But I guess some people can say, I'm going to give him the $50 million because I still have $950 million to do good. And she was able to change the composition of the department, change the program in a humane way, when there's a lot of money for employment and training, and had an incredible impact on so many organizations that changed who they were training, changed who they were hiring. So it is possible. And like that example, I can give you examples of many people who stay behind and do good work, overlooking those little or big horror stories and sort of keeping focus on what is it that they want to do.
I think I have one more question. Thank you for being here. It's been a pleasure. We are very much a nonprofit, not a foundation. And we've read your book that says admiration and how you raise money for so much of the work that you've accomplished so successfully, incredibly, education.
People run away from me when they see me.
We understand that in this room, that you would not believe. So, you know, again, the work that we do is critical, might not be positive or well received in the public right now. That's filled with fear and misinformation. But we do need to fund the work, and we would welcome an idea and Jeremy, words of wisdom, anything as we go about this retreat that you may have for us based on all your incredible experiences. We do need to fund the critical work that we do, and any ideas or words of inspiration would be greatly appreciated. Thank you again for the time.
I now leave every discussion with friends or acquaintances or people that I meet for a second. We were at a fundraiser that Lin-Manuel and I organized for the vice president, and I was sitting across this guy who looked like he had a lot of money. You know, when people look like he had a lot of money. He looked like he had a lot of money. And he says to me, Lin-Manuel is on one side, and he says to me, if I can be of help, please call me. And Lin-Manuel jumps from the other side. So don't tell that to my dad. You understand that people say that, if you don't mean it, take it back. Because he's gonna call you tomorrow. to help, as you said you were gonna help. So on the one hand, I meet people and follow up right away in whatever it was that they said they could do. I met a lady last night who had read my book and said she identified, Puerto Rican woman, identified so much with what I was saying, and she said she could be helpful. This morning when I got up at 5, I had the 2 cards that I picked up last night, and I emailed them both so that I will not forget, since I will be gone the entire day. So you have to be very intentional in everything you do. And I live with the model that I tell everyone, you have to give until it hurts. If it doesn't hurt, you did not give enough. If you were able to spend the money on wonderful frivolous things like shoes, and you got your expensive shoes, you didn't give enough. We don't need expensive shoes. We just need comfortable shoes. So I am constantly telling people, and I learned, I was trained in creating the Hispanic Federation by the United Jewish People. You have to ask. You have to ask constantly. The first study that I did at the Hispanic Federation, the average home is 1990 receives 8 solicitations. We Latinos receive only solicitations of churches. So we gave to the church because those were the people who asked for money. You have to ask constantly. My dad used to say, I don't know, people here need to help me translate. Yo me lavo la cara con lechuga every morning. I have no shame. It's sort of the best way to translate it. And I will ask for a number that it's so huge that people will look at me like they're looking at a ghost. And then we'll negotiate something that is real. But I know you're worth $10 million. You could give me 50 grand. That may be a stretch, but you have to give up the hurts. So I don't know any other way that constantly doing it. Never be ashamed of asking, because we are asking to do good work. You're asking people for money to do good work. And you start with your friends and family. That's the first one. You can give me $100, give me $100. But everybody has to give. And I was reading an email that I was getting from a friend of mine that wants me to help Supreme Court race. And she knows how I am. So she starts by saying, you gotta ask everyone in your family to give you $1,000. And I started emailing Lin-Manuel and my daughter and my son and my wife. This is the absolute link, $1,000 each. So just do it and do it constantly.
Excellent. Well, that I think is going to be a great bridge into a session later today. So Lauren, just make sure we upload photos of people's shoes. So with that, I know we could definitely go on forever, but we are getting to the end of time. So I want to give you an opportunity for any kind of closing comments or thoughts, and then we'll wrap up after that.
These are going to be very tough times. Said Carrie at the very beginning, unprecedented. It's 4 weeks, and we cannot find the news of the puppy that was found and made a kid happy. And we have to get ready to fight in every front to protect what we have and to try to get some more. And to do that, it's an all-out effort. I think and not everyone needs to do this, but you have to really commit. My son writes in the preface something that actually, when I read it, made me very sad. My son said in the preface of the book that the most important thing in my life was the work I did, which I understood to mean it's more important than your wife, it's more important than your kids. What you do is the most important thing that you do. And for some people, it should be that. And for others, it can't. And we need to be able to accept as much or as little as we can from everyone, because we all have to work as hard as our mind and our heart allow us to be able to fight the next 4 years.
Well, thank you. It's not quite a puppy, but it is definitely motivational for us. And I don't know if you generated the name of the memoir yourself, or if everyone just said the obvious name is Relentless.
No, my son did. There's a documentary about this called embodies. And they asked Lin-Manuel, how would you describe your dad? And he said, he is a relentless motherfucker. Hashem felt that the second part was so strong that they added all that shit over the top.
Well, I can just, yeah, sorry, Karen.
First of all, thank you so much for coming. Secondly, we found the puppy. It's been returned. And the third, could we have $1 million?
The other part that I said is that you don't know.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all so much. Again, another hand for Luis Miranda.